Welcome back to Project 2 and the Turbo Yamaha S21 project. Big things have been happening, as I'm sure that you can see by the thumbnail of this video. And like all big things, well, they take time. I've done a couple videos on the panel in the past, and I encourage anyone who didn't catch those to go back and take a look at them. But I'll do a quick overview of what I've done to get to this point. I started by downloading the CAD file straight from RANS for the general panel dimensions and the mounting layout. Then I just played with the component layouts for months, it seems like, until I had something that I was happy with. Most components, like all the Dynon stuff, have CAD files available, which make it super simple and accurate to lay out things like this. Other parts require some research and a bit more planning. The plan was just to send the original RANS panel that came with the kit out to Aircraft Specialty and have the details cut in. However, at Steve's suggestion, we ended up stepping up the panel thickness just a bit, since we were removing so much material with the two large screens, just to be safe. They cut that panel and sent it out to me for a test fit. I fit all the components up on the plane, confirming that fitment and the function. I did all the things like countersinking nut plate holes and such, so that I wouldn't have to be trying to do those things later with a finished panel. I sent that panel back down to Aircraft Specialty, and they got it powder coated in this awesome dark gray color that Steve recommended. That color code is RANS S21 for those wondering. Then we worked on the labeling back and forth for a bit until it was just like I wanted, and his team absolutely knocked it out of the park. It turned out super crisp and nice, and multiple orders of magnitude better than what I could have come up with on my own. Once that panel was back, it went together without any hassle since it had already been on there once before. It's just amazing how much wire it takes to get all this stuff connected and working together like it should. I'm 90% done with the wiring behind the panel, with only a few last things to wire up and finalize, like the wingtip lights and adding the pitot lines. I've spent countless hours keeping the wires as organized as I could, and many feet of string ties gone into securing things into place and keeping it nice and tidy. I've even put in a couple fans for the defrost or heat dissipation from behind the panel. We'll talk a bit more about the heating setup in just a bit. I've set up things just a bit different than a typical airplane. The key is just a 2-position on-off switch, and it acts pretty much like a master switch. I've programmed the PDM to turn on everything you'd typically have come on with that switch, like the left HDX screen, so I have engine instruments and the ECU and keypad. The first button is the avionics master, and it turns on the rest of the components you'd normally have off during an engine start, just like a regular aircraft. The sliders control all the interior lighting, including the Dynon components, as well as the heater and defrost fans respectively. I programmed the defrost fans to come on first with the slider, shortly followed by the heater fans, just in case I ever wanted them on to remove heat from behind the panel on a hot day without having the heater fan kicking as well. I put a bypass valve on the coolant lines coming to the heater core so I can dial in just the right amount of heat coming in with this awesome McFarlane knob, or even just prevent any hot coolant from entering at all. The underdash lighting for what I'm calling the knee lights is intended to illuminate the area most would have a knee board or a map without having a light source visible to the eye. I picked a green color for these lights, as it's one of those colors least detrimental to night vision, and well, I think it looks cool too. Those are just rock lights intended for off-road vehicles. The dome light dimmer is for the overhead lights that are not in place at this time. Alright, let's take a closer look at some of the components in the panel. The master key, like I said, is a simple on-off switch. It's tucked away up high and left away from everything else, just to prevent accidental switching. Next to that's the first HDX screen, which gives me all of that required information for flight and navigation, as well as engine indications. The center of the panel holds the standard Dynon boxes for comm and autopilot interfacing. Below that is the Blink Marine Canbus Keypad. It's got large backlit buttons with customizable faces, and it sits proud of the panel surface, giving a good stable place to rest your hand while hitting the buttons, similar to the Dynon screen. Paired with the hardwire electronics PDM, I pretty much have unlimited options as to how I want each button to function. As an example, the engine ignition button turns on with a single press, just like you'd expect. But it does require a 2-second hold to power off, preventing accidentally killing the engine if you inadvertently hit it. The next 2 buttons are for fuel pumps, followed by the starter button and the taxi camera. Then I have the low and high beams, or taxi and landing lights, followed by the nav and strobe lights. The top right button dims the keypad, but the plan is to dim that with the panel dim slider in the future, but only if I need to use that button for something else. The last button down on the lower right is the reset button for any of the solid-state breakers inside the PDM. The USB ports up top are for loading maps and software or programming of any of the various components behind this panel. I do have charge ports in the center console between the seats. I didn't want cables hanging out from the panel. Over on the right is currently a blanking plate where the second HDX will go eventually. It's fully pre-wired and ready for a screen whenever I get around to it. Just outboard of that is the cutout for the Elt Remote, which I don't have yet either. Down at the bottom, you'll find the parking brake, throttle, and heater control knobs. I did have a cover panel made and coated when I did the panel, so it would all match. One more cool integration detail is that I used some of the general purpose inputs in the Dynon EMS to trigger indications of water pumps, radiator fans, and even lambda sensor status. Now let's talk about all the companies that you see represented on this panel. Not all these guys are necessarily sponsors of the channel, but they all did contribute to the plane becoming what it is at this point, and in an effort to show my gratitude, they made the coveted spot of being front and center. My hopes are that it'll at the very least cause some folks to go check them out and see what they have to offer. First up is Hypersports. You'll find them on Facebook, and it'll simply blow your mind when you see all the things that they do. These guys offer the plug-and-play ECU that I used, and they have been simply vital to getting the Yamaha to work out so well. Over on the other side, you see Aircraft Specialty. You'll see these guys again here in the future during this project, but they're the skilled hands that made this panel, and I can't say enough good things about how well it turned out. Beside them is SkyTrax USA, and unless you've been living under a rock, that's the developer of these awesome reduction drives that allow us to use these Yamaha engines. Down at the bottom is McFarland Aviation. I wouldn't go any other route with my hand controls, and these look, feel, and function at a level worthy of being in this panel. Last but not least is Dynon. And I've been working with Dynon since pretty early in this build. Simply put, this is a dream setup for me, and I can't imagine anything but the Dynon line being front and center. A big heartfelt thanks goes out to all these companies. Go show them some love for me, and I'll leave you with some dark shots of me playing with this panel at night. As always, thanks for watching, and I'd love to hear what you think in the comments below.